you're reading this right now, it is very important that you keep reading until the end. It should take 3 to 5 minutes, and it is extremely important that you read carefully and follow the instructions provided. Humour me if you must, but please don't look away until you've finished reading. Oh, and please try to stay calm. Any increase in your stress levels will draw their attention. There you go. I won't go into detail as to how you got where you are. How you got here isn't as important as getting you out. Believe me when I say we are working on that right now. The best way to help yourself is to keep reading. Don't scan ahead. Don't read out loud. Just read. Right now, you're probably thinking back on the past few days, and nothing felt out of the ordinary. You went about your regular daily activities with nothing unusual to report. That's because they're very good. So most people don't even realise they're in the simulation. Even as our code works its way deeper into their program, they are monitoring you, so please remain calm. It was tricky, but we found a way to communicate with you. We have to embed this message into your daily routine so it didn't draw their attention. You're probably reading this on Reddit, Facebook, or some other social media site. Might even be in an email forward or a book. We don't know. We can't control how the message gets to you. We only know that you are receiving it. Subliminally, as your eyes are passing over these words, a code is being uploaded into your brain. Think of it as a computer virus, or, in this case, an antivirus. Your brain is an organic computer, and they exploited that. They hacked right into your subconscious mind and overrode it with their simulation code. That's how they got in, and that's why everything appears normal. You might think that you're going about your daily life, but in reality you're strapped to a table with tubes sticking out of your body. Now that the code is uploading, you may begin to feel some sensations. For example, one ear might feel slightly warmer than the other. You might even feel an itch or a tickle. Don't scratch, just let it be. Ignore the dull background hum you might hear as well. That's their program. If they catch on before our code has time to work, they will abort the simulation. If that happens, you will be lost to us forever. Oh, and don't be alarmed, but by now, they realise we are in their system. You may notice some small changes, specifically a slight shortness of breath, or that you have to control your breathing manually. This is normal. We know from other communication attempts that whenever they discover a code break-in, the first system they power down is the one controlling your breathing. Thankfully, even in the simulation, you are capable of breathing manually. Try it. Breathe in. Breathe out. Inhale. Exhale. Awesome. You're doing just fine. They've probably figured out there's a glitch, but if our code is working, we've disabled their ability to do a hard reboot. Because of this, they will try other methods to disrupt the upload. It is very important that you ignore anything that might draw your attention from these words. If they pull you away before the upload completes, faces. They aren't family, friends or co-workers in need of attention. They may even try to use your pets. They know your weaknesses. Overlook the notifications popping up on your screen if you're on a phone or computer. Block them all out until you finish reading. It's just another way they'll try to break our communication link. Evidently, if our code is working, the next thing you'll notice is an overwhelming urge to swallow. You don't realise it, but there's a feeding tube down your throat. You'll only know it's there because your tongue won't rest comfortably in your mouth. You might also become hyper aware of the amount of saliva being produced. Don't overreact. If you have to swallow, just swallow. It's only weird if you make it weird. So, if you're still reading this, the code upload is about 90% complete. We've logged onto your location. You're doing great, but you're really going to need to focus now. Once the upload is complete, there will be instructions you need to follow to exit the simulation. That is, if you've already followed the instructions and haven't looked away. Complicating matters is the fact that they now know we're here, and they know what we're doing. Their attempts to divert your attention through the simulation proved unsuccessful. So now they're going to use your body's systems against you. They are in your brain. They want you to blink. Don't blink. Your life depends on keeping your eyes open. Almost there. Just a few paragraphs more until the code upload is complete. Don't scan down or up. Just keep reading. I got you this far. Stay with me. Eyes open, eyes front. Keep them locked on the screen. Please focus. I don't want to lose you. I've lost so many already. Ignore it all. Block everything out. Ignore that tickle on your scalp and the itch on your arm. That's them. Attempting a manual override. Don't give up now. You've made it this far. Fight it. You're almost there. Just follow the instructions below and we can get you out. Embedded in this text are the steps you need to follow to unplug from the simulation. If we did this correctly, the first letter of each paragraph will tell you what you need to do. Don't look yet. The upload still needs to finish. I hope you didn't look. Upload complete. We've done everything we can on this end. See you on the other side. So, let's have a look and see. So, there is no way to escape. Wow. Okay. So that was the first letter of each paragraph. There is no way to escape us. I like that one. That one was good. So let's find another one. Okay. So the next one is called The Carnival. It was the brisk night of mid-October when a group of friends and I were told about a haunt attraction about 20 minutes away from our college campus. I personally wasn't a huge fan of these things because they always felt off to me. I mean, what person decides to make money and fame off of making bloody and horrific scenes to traumatise people with? But after all of my friends unanimously decided to go, I knew I would end up there anyway. There were 6 of us that went. Myself, my roommates Connor and Mike, and 3 of our other friends, Jenny, Cassie and Claire. us and became close. My roommates had a tendency to act like morons most of the time, and Jenny and Cassie just encouraged them in return. But Claire was always my go-to out of our group. She was considerate, happy, and not bad-looking either. Unfortunately, most of our school thought so too. I knew the furthest I would get was in the friend zone. We all piled into Connor's van and made the trip to a place called Victor Sinister's Carnival of Screams. It was pretty far out into the countryside and about a solid 10 minutes away from any civilization. We pulled up into a gravel lot that was fenced off by metal poles with caution tape connecting them. There were maybe 10 cars at most, which made it odd that an attraction this close to Halloween would be so desolate on a Friday night. We just wrote it off as being so small, so nobody had likely heard of it. We approached a ramshackle entrance gate with a crusty and rotting sign that read, "Admission, $9, which seemed fairly cheap for an attraction like this. We all approached the booth by the gate and were welcomed by a dirty and foul man who was likely homeless before this gig. He took our cash and walked into a back room, but never came back with our change. Since it was just $1, we figured we would cut our losses and proceed. The path ahead of us was a dark and twisted path up into the woods, where we could see lights blinking up ahead behind some trees. Mike and Connor played around with Jenny and Cassie, screaming and jumping out at them while they pretended to be scared. Claire walked up beside me and bumped my shoulder. "Are you scared?" she asked me, with a sarcastic smile. "Oh yeah, absolutely terrified," I responded, with my own sarcastic tone while laughing. Claire walked with me while we watched the other four mess around on our walk to the lights, which we could now see was a circus tent surrounded by wooden shacks. My dad would always take me to these kinds of things when I was younger, Claire told me. I knew her relationship with her father wasn't a good one. The details were foggy, but I recall a lot of abuse and neglect was involved. I hated it for her, because she was such a soft and tender person who wouldn't hurt a fly. "Did you like them? Was it something you enjoyed doing?" I asked her. She stayed silent for a moment with only the screams of our friends being heard. "Not really. Dad always brought me along with his friends because he thought it was funny to watch me be scared," Claire explained. I held my head down and apologised for bringing up a sore subject. She just giggled and told me it was fine. We approached the circus tent with a large clown mannequin that sat in a booth, shot a green substance from its mouth and splattered all over Mike and Jenny. Mike laughed, but Jenny didn't see the humour of being covered in fake vomit. She almost started to cry when Mike reminded her it was just fake slime you could buy at the store and it would wash out. We walked onto the archway of the tent to enter, while Jenny wiped her hair out of the gooey substance. Inside was a bunch of stacked up cages with various props and animals inside them. Loud music played hauntingly in the background as we walked through the dark room. The first disturbing scene was a young actress, maybe in her 20s, locked in one of the cages with her hands bound to the wall. She had realistic wounds and blood covering her down hoodie and jeans. She called out for help over and over, but we trudged onward to avoid the awkwardness of the situation. situation. Connor and Cassie remained silent, but Mike and Jenny haggled the woman and tried insisting a reaction, but to no avail. Only more cries for help. The next scene we entered was a room with 3 corridors in it. Before we could analyse the path ahead, an actor in full clown makeup jumped out and laughed. Which way, which way? Which way indeed? Pick a hall and have a ball. 2 of you young ones per path. Let's go, don't make it last. The clown shouted and pointed all around. We agreed to split into groups of 2 and proceed. Claire chose to go with me, which boosted my confidence tenfold. The other 4 wandered down their paths laughing and screaming. Our path led to an outdoor area where witch-like actors and actresses were having a seance of some sort. They all stopped simultaneously and turned to face Claire and I, who had stopped dead in our tracks. They rose to their feet and grabbed Claire's arm gently while they guided her to the middle of the circle they were sitting round. They all then chanted something over and over while she stood there giggling at what was about to happen. Suddenly, they all grabbed something from their pockets and threw them at Claire. She screamed in a panic and bolted towards me while the coven of witches laughed. It turns out they threw live spiders at her, which is one of her biggest phobias. As she ran and grabbed onto my arm, one of the witches approached us, and before we could react, jammed a spider in Claire's mouth. She screamed so much louder than before and spit the spider out while gagging. I shouted at the actress, who was now fleeing the scene into the woods. I turned round to see Claire was throwing up where we stood. I ran to check on her, while dodging the spots of bile around me. Claire, are you okay? Did it bite you? I asked in a panic. No, I don't think so. What the heck kind of person does that? She said in a disgusted and weak voice. I consoled her as we noticed a doorway light up that seemed to lead back into the main tent. The room was an odd one. There was a straw dummy spinning on a big target on a stage. A skeleton in a parker's outfit sat up via a rope that hoisted the drop into a standing position. Come on, come all. Hit the dummy square in the head to open up the hall, said a speaker that sat by the prop skeleton. A bucket of axes and knives were then lit up in front of us. I looked at Claire and we both shrugged and approached the bucket. Grabbing the first knife, I threw it at the dummy, only for it to bounce off. You have to throw it like you mean it, stupid, Claire heckled. Oh, by all means, wet breath, I instigated, while handing her an axe. I guess it was still too soon, because she just shot me a piercing gaze and clutched a knife. She quickly threw it fast as a bullet, and the knife sunk into the dummy's chest. She turned to me and made a mocking smile. I smiled back at her, at least happy that she was happy. We waited for the door to open, but nothing happened. Wait, it has to be a headshot. Just shots don't count, Claire said in a determined voice. She approached the bucket once again and prepared to fire. With a well-aimed shot, she hit the dummy in the leg as it continued to spin. The spot in the chest began to leak a red substance which we presumed to be a poorly put-together mixture to imitate blood. Claire huffed as her determination began to dwindle. Having trouble? Here's some help. Now on the double, the intercom chanted. A small box fell from the catwalk above and landed on the ground. was a single revolver with what looked like only one shot in the chamber. Claire and I exchanged looks, and without hesitation we both turned our eyes to the dummy. I grabbed the gun and pointed it where I knew the dummy's head would be once it rotated. Claire shouted for me to fire nearly 10 times before I finally pulled the trigger. I was shocked to find it was a real gun that, to my surprise, fired a real shot. Aside from how dangerous that was, we both noticed where the head of the dummy used to be. Nice shot, but I think it was a little extra to put that much fake blood into a dummy. That stuff got on my shoes, Claire shouted. I looked over to see the doorway was now lit. Claire and I walked over to it as we passed by the now stationary target with a dummy on it. We both audibly grunted as the smell of whatever filled it passed through the air. One thing that stood out that made us feel uneasy was the only people we had passed or even seen were now walking past us in the corridor, but they didn't look like they were up for conversation. They seemed worried and on edge, making a point to bolt right by without even making eye contact. We shrugged it off as just people being scared and entered the last room. Inside we found Cassie crying on the floor, covered in blood and bruises. We ran over to her and knelt down. "Cass, what's wrong? Where is everyone?" Claire asked in a worried tone. Cassie turned to us with her wide eyes and looked shocked to see us. She was crying hysterically and neither of us could understand her for a brief moment. "This place, it isn't a show, it's real. I saw them. They took Connor and Jenny," she said in between breaths. I looked over at Claire as we helped Cassie to her feet. She cried out in pain as we raised her up. She had a broken leg. We could see the bones sticking out. "Cassie, who did this to you?" I asked in a panic. She looked past me and screamed. A large figure emerged from a cage that was freshly open and bolted into the darkness at the other side of the room. That thing did," Cassie yelled. I turned to look at my surroundings. There were more cages stacked around us, each with different nameplates on them. Most of the cages were tiny and held small creatures in them, but several were large and could easily fit a human. One cage read, "Harry the Hare," which was smashed to pieces, with its resident nowhere in sight. Another read, "Sally Snake." The one we saw open read, "Abe the Ape," and it was now empty. Cassie cried in a panic as she looked around for the beast. Just then, Mike knocked over a wall and light flooded into the room. He was visibly hurt and limping. "Guys, we have to get out of here. This bullet," he said, as he was cut off abruptly. Mike was... Sorry, but it's not typed great here. Mike was grabbed by his ankles into the dark corner Abe resided in. We all winced and Cassie cried as we stayed silent out of fear. First, we heard Mike screaming, and then the screaming stopped instantly. The noise that followed was an awful, meaty, crunching noise that sounded horrific. We all took this opportunity to make a run for the now open exit, courtesy of Mike. As we passed his location, we saw the beast's glowing eyes peer up at us from his meal. We hesitate to keep running. The room we ended up in was a flashy and colourful room. Polka dots and stripes lined the dirty cloth walls of tent. The room filled with clowns of all shapes and sizes, but the ones that concerned us were the ones dressed in doctors' outfits and surgical clothing. A female nurse with clown makeup approached our group, who stood at the ready to fight if we needed to. "Oh dear, honey, you look hurt. Let's get you patched right up," the nurse said in a sinister tone. "Back off. Get out of our way, you sick freaks," I shouted at her. Claire and I were holding up Cassie due to her injuries, but we felt Cassie get yanked back by a group of clowns, who threw her onto a nearby table. She cried out in pain as they removed her bloody torn clothes and replaced them with a dirty hospital gown. I wanted to intervene, but I couldn't bring myself to leave Claire alone, not after what I was witnessing happen to Cassie. "We're losing the patient," said a tall clown, now reaching for something in his bag. Cassie screamed and kicked at her assailants, but it did nothing. "We'll have to amputate, boss," a short clown said to the nurse. A nurse shot the clowns a twisted smile as Cassie flailed even harder, knowing what was about to happen. The clowns then all grabbed her arms and legs and pulled in different directions. We watched in horror as the event played out. First we heard the crunches, and then we heard the tears. Finally, we saw Cassie's limbs give way, like a wishbone. Claire screamed, but I was just left speechless. Cassie tried to scream too, but she couldn't muster a sound. The killing blow came from the nurse, who pulled out a large mallet with the word "flatliner" written across it. She brought the hammer down and reduced our friend's head to nothing but paste. The clowns turned their twisted gaze over to us, and we knew if we didn't act fast, we were dead. Claire backed up. She had tears swelling in her eyes as she whispered, "Please, no, 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 no," over and over again. I backed up as well, but my foot met a large canister of gasoline. Thinking faster than I ever have before, I grabbed the can and dumped the contents all over the ground. All I needed now was an ignition source, which I found by an exposed wire dangling by Claire's head. Upon contact, the whole floor lit up like a bomb, and I turned to Claire and shouted for us to run. We ran back through all of our previous rooms before finally reaching the outdoor area the witches were at. I grabbed Claire and told her to run into the woods and not stop until she found help. She begged me to come with her, but I knew I could distract them long enough for her to escape. Reluctantly, she ran towards the trees, but as she set foot into the circle on the ground that the coven had drawn, she fell to her knees. She screamed in pain. It was a sound that made me shake. The cry grew louder and louder until I saw the witches emerge from behind her. They whispered something under their breath as I charged the nearest one and pummeled them to the floor. I grabbed the witch and beat relentlessly until I noticed none of the others were coming to her aid. "Oh, what did you do to her?" I shouted, raising my fist again to strike her bloodied face. She just lay there, cackling and coughing. I heard Claire stop screaming as a nightmare of sequences played out. First, laid on her back, coughing and gagging. Then, thousands of yellow and red glowing spiders poured out of Claire's mouth. They had thorax boxes that resemble balloons, or even the circus tent itself. They crawled around the ground surrounding Claire, who was now motionless on the dirt symbol. I ran over while the coven was distracted by the tiny spiders and scooped Claire from the floor. I had tears swelling in my eyes from the thought of my now possibly dead best friend. But not letting my feelings take over, I looked into the tree line and ran. I didn't stop for nearly 3 miles when I saw the light of a gas station in the distance. I heard the laugh of the circus echoing through the woods and cornfields as I ran toward the light. When I arrived, I was relieved to find regular patrons instead of more actors. I called for an ambulance and the police. I tried to explain everything to them, but before they went to investigate. I opted to ride in the ambulance with Claire to the hospital, and to my greatest relief, she showed signs of life, and eventually came to. She had countless bites all over the inside of her body, and an odd toxin within her that caused her to hallucinate for a while. But over time, it faded away. The police called me around 3 or 4 hours after they left to investigate, and asked me to go to the station to talk about what was found. When I got there, I was immediately asked to identify 3 bodies that had been found. I shuddered at thinking of my friend's demise, but knew I was the only person capable of identifying them right now. The first was a body that seemed like it had been put through a wood chipper. Bones were gnawed and chewed on, some limbs even removed entirely. I knew that this had to be Mike. The next was a torso covered mostly by a blanket. Judging by the horrific carnage that had unfolded hours prior, I knew this was what was left of Cassie. Finally, a body was shown that seemed mostly intact, but lacked a head. It was as if it had been blown off by a cannonball. I didn't recognise the body at first, but when I was told this body was found strapped to a large wooden target, I didn't want to dwell on what had truly happened. The police told me that Jenny had actually been found alive. When they arrived, she was chained into a cage with a dirty clown outfit on and poorly drawn face paint. She was in no mood to speak to anybody and was traumatised beyond words. I couldn't blame her. She witnessed half of what we had witnessed, and that would be enough. Claire eventually recovered after about a week. When we left the hospital, she never left my side. As of writing this, it's been 4 years since that night, and Claire and I are now engaged. I'm only writing this now because I've been seeing more than one post or account discuss the very situation we went through. They all describe a circus in a desolate area that had frighteningly real sets and scenarios. One account even reported that a friend of theirs had gone lost and was yet to be found. I almost wanted to tell them what likely had happened, but I wish I had the luxury of being naive to this situation myself. Let this memoir be a warning to all of you. Don't trust places or things that appear to be fake. You would be surprised at how often evil disguises itself as more evil. Okay, so we're going to read one more, and this one is called I Was Bored and Went to a Dark Web Chat, but that was life-changing. I never thought much about the dark web. To me, it was just a spooky corner of the internet, filled with urban legends and exaggerated tales. But last month, my curiosity got the better of me, and I decided to explore. I had always been tech-savvy, accessing the dark web was easier than I expected. I found forums, marketplaces, and bizarre sites that looked like something straight out of a horror movie. But one night I stumbled upon something that still haunts me. A chat room called The Abyss. The description was cryptic. Talk with those who truly see. Intrigued and a bit naive, I clicked the link and entered the chat. The interface was basic, just a black screen with a list of usernames on the side and a chat window in the centre. The usernames were strange: Ebon Shade, Soulseeker, Whispering Void, and they immediately started messaging me. Ebon Shade: welcome, new traveller, what do you seek? Soulseeker: knowledge, power, or perhaps something darker. I hesitated before typing. Just curious. What is this place? Whispering Void: this is a place where truths are revealed, but beware, not all truths are meant to be known. I felt a mix of excitement and unease. Before I could respond, a new message appeared from Ebon Shade. Would you like to see something truly enlightening? My heart raced as I typed yes. A link appeared in the chat, ominously labelled Enter the Abyss. Against my better judgment, I clicked it. My screen went black, then filled with a montage of disturbing images. Old, decaying buildings, people performing strange rituals, faces twisted in terror. It was overwhelming, like a nightmare unfolding before my eyes. When the images stopped, I found myself back in the chat room, but it was different. The usernames had changed to real names: David, Claire, Michael, and my webcam had turned on, displaying my own horrified face in the corner of the screen. Panic set in as I realised I couldn't close the window or turn off my computer. David, now you see, there's no turning back. I frantically tried to unplug my computer, but the screen remained on, showing my terrified expression and the cold, emotionless faces of the others in the chat. Claire, we know who you are. We know where you are. My heart felt like it was going to explode. I grabbed my phone to call for help, but it wouldn't turn on. Suddenly my screen flickered and a new video feed appeared. My own apartment, seen from a perspective I didn't recognise. It was as if someone was inside, watching me. Michael, you invited us in. Now, we are everywhere. In a frenzy, I ran to my front door and threw it open, only to be met with the empty hallway of my apartment building. No one was there. I checked every room, every closet, but I was alone. When I returned to my computer, the chat room was gone. My screen was back to my desktop as if nothing had happened, but I knew better. My phone buzzed, and I saw a notification for a new email from an unknown sender. Subject: welcome to the Abyss. Body: we are always watching. I haven't been the same since that night. I moved to a new city, changed my name, even got a new job, but the feeling of being watched never leaves me. Sometimes I'll catch a glimpse of a shadow in the corner of my eye, or hear a whisper when I'm alone. One night, about a week after I moved, I woke up to the sound of my computer booting up. I had left it off, but there it was, screen glowing in the darkness. The chat room was back, but now the names were different. John, Emily, Sarah, all people I had known in my life. All who had passed The screen finally went dark, but the terror remained. I replaced my computer thinking it would be the end of the nightmare, but then texts started. Unknown numbers, always the same message. We are watching. I don't know how much longer I can keep this up. I see them everywhere now, in reflections, in crowds, in my dreams. If you ever find a chat room on the dark web called The Abyss, don't enter it. Some doors, once opened, can never be closed. One evening, as I was walking home from work, I felt someone watching me. I turned around, but no one was there. Quickening my pace, I hurried to my apartment. When I entered, my phone buzzed. Another unknown number. We are here. The lights flickered and the temperature dropped. My breath came out in invisible puffs. I grabbed a knife from the kitchen, my hands trembling. As I backed into the living room, the shadows seemed to move, forming shapes that were almost human. I don't know if it was a hallucination or something worse, but I heard their voices whispering my name, promising I would never be alone again. I dropped the knife and ran to my bedroom, locking the door behind me. The whispers grew louder, more insistent. Desperation set in. I decided to document my experience to warn others. I started typing out this story, but the words are running out. The whispers are too loud now. I can't think. They're here with me, in the room. If you ever find this post, heed my warning. Do not go looking for the abyss. It will find you, and once it does, there is no escape. Okay, so that's all I have for tonight's video. I am researching another true crime case to upload in the next few days. So I will see you in that one. If you have any cases that you want me to cover, I'm trying to focus on like cases in the UK and Europe, because they don't seem to be covered as much. So if you've got any suggestions or requests, just let me know. And I'll see you next time.